Alright, today I have a super interesting video to film for you guys. Start off by what I'm eating. I have some, these are like a mango chicken wing, and this is just the hot chicken wing from Domino's. And then I made this macaroni and cheese pizza. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about somebody called Carl Tanzler. I don't know if you guys have heard about him, but story's pretty crazy. So basically think about, like, have you ever loved somebody? Most people would say yes. Some people go to different extremes for the people that they love. And that's just one way to put what Carl Tanzler did. Oh, it just came out of the oven. It's still hot. Now, Carl, you could say, was a pathological liar. He lied all the time. Nobody really knows what happened in his earlier life, but they do know that he traveled a lot and wasn't really with his family much. His family's in Germany, remember. He traveled to Cuba, he traveled to Florida, ultimately found a job at a hospital in Florida. Oh, Zephyr Hills, Florida is what it was. And he moved there. His family shortly followed. He decided he was tired of his family, didn't want to fucks with them anymore, so he moves to Key West, Florida, where he gets a job at a U.S. Marine base, in a hospital, working as some kind of a doctor. He had no background. Once again, this is where his lying comes in. Had no kind of a medical background. Got in U.S. Marine base, got paid a bunch of money to be a doctor there. Now keep in mind, this all took place in the 1930s. Something that happened in the 1930s was the tuberculosis outbreak, which at that time was a fatal illness. So basically, if you got it, you were gonna die. There was no way to help you. My man Carl worked in the part of the hospital that dealt with patients with tuberculosis. While working at the hospital, he met somebody by the name of Elena Hoyos. People call her Helen. I'm going to call her Helen because that's just easier for me. Now, one thing that was found out later after the investigation took place was that when Carl was younger, he was visited by some ancestor who couldn't be named. He just knew that in his dreams there was an ancestor who visited him and told him about who his true love would be, and showed him a figure of this woman, beautiful woman with dark hair, and he from then on believed that that would be his true love. Obviously forgot about it somewhere along the line because he got married, had kids, right? Now, Helen, when he saw her, he had this epiphany. This was the woman that his ancestors told him about, the woman of his dreams, the woman he was supposed to marry. He was in love. He was in his late 30s, early 40s. Helen was 20 when she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, began her treatment at the hospital. Carl began treating her. You get the gist. He falls in love. He was already in love, I guess. She was his true love. It was meant to be. It was written in the stars. Now, Carl also believed that his sole purpose in life was to take care of Helen, cure her of her illness. Then surely she would want to marry him, live forever, happily ever after. He just knew it, okay? Since he was such a well-known doctor in this hospital, and as we know, at this time, tuberculosis was basically a death sentence. There was nothing that they could do. The hospital allowed Carl to take, I guess, medicines, equipment, anything from the hospital, not anything, but, you know, just because he wanted to help find a cure for tuberculosis, because that's what he's supposed to do with his life, right? So he starts off by feeding Helen all of these medicines, figuring out what's going to work. He starts taking things from the hospital without their okay, like x-ray machines. He would set it up in the De Hoyos home. He basically became consumed with figuring out how to treat Helen for tuberculosis. 2 years into her treatment, she died. As you can imagine, Carl was heartbroken. But he took it upon himself to pay for all the funeral arrangements. He bought her a mausoleum. He paid to have her body, autopsied, embalmed. He gave all of this money to her family to help cover the funeral costs, make sure that she had everything that she could possibly need in her afterlife, make sure her family was taken care of. One thing that's important to note is that Helen never returned the liking to Carl. So she always thought that he was kind of like a weird old man. He had proposed multiple times. She told him no every time. But to Carl, that meant nothing. You know, they were meant to be. So he kept trying. Now, Helen's family thought that this was a little bit weird. You know, he was her doctor. To their knowledge, they, that was all he was. There was nothing more. And he's paying for everything. He bought her a mausoleum, which, for those of you who don't know, is this giant cement, gravestone that you walk into. It's got a door, you walk into it, the body is put inside there. It's got its own, little house, I guess. Phantom of the Opera, you know? Now, what Helen's family did not know was that there was one key made to enter this mausoleum. Guess who had it? Carl. So, Carl began visiting Helen's grave almost every night. The townspeople saw it start to happen. They thought it was a little bit weird. You know, he visited her for 2 years after she died. Every single night he was there. And then he gets this vision, right, in his sleep, like the one he had when he was a child. But this time, Helen herself appears to him and tells him to bring her home. So he takes a wagon to the mausoleum, takes her body, and brings it home to his house by the ocean. The townspeople notice.
Hey, this dude's no longer showing up to the mausoleum. That's a little bit weird, right? Because he's been there every night for the past 2 years. We've seen him go in and out.
He is seen out in town buying women's clothing. He's seen out in town buying perfumes, buying, preserving chemicals, you know, for bodies to preserve them in the afterlife. So people around town are like,
Hey, that's a little bit weird. This guy lives alone. He's out buying women's perfume. He's buying dresses. Like, what's going on, you know?
take a look into Carl's home by the water, and you'll find Helen's body. He's trying to preserve her. He uses wire coat hangers to piece her bones together. He's using all kinds of chemicals to try to stop her skin from decaying, try to stop the decomposition process. You can only do it so much. To cover up the smell, he's using perfume, he's using formaldehyde, anything he can to cover the smell. He's buying her jewelry, he's buying her, like I said, brand new dresses, dressing her up, and keeping her in his bed. The townspeople thought something was up. A couple years had passed since her death. It's now 7 years later. And her family starts to hear all of this hearsay about Carl and the weird things that he's doing, and how he was at the mausoleum and now he doesn't go there anymore, and how he's buying all these women's clothing. And her sister, her older sister, gets in contact with Carl. Starts talking about how she misses Helen. Kind of, seeing what's up. Carl tells her, there's no reason for you to miss her. She's here. She's with us. So her sister's like,
Excuse me?
she's like, this guy is crazy. My sister's dead. She's been dead. It's been 7 years. And he says, come over. I'll show you to her. She goes upstairs. And in his bed, on the other side of a curtain, lied her sister's body. Unrecognizable at this point. Her body has mostly decomposed by this point. He's covered her in wax, in porcelain pieces. She looked like a bad version of a doll, slightly mimicked after her sister. She immediately leaves the house, goes to the police. The police show up. They take the body away for an autopsy. They take Carl away, put him in jail until his sentencing, or until his court date. Now remember, 7 years has passed. It's been 5 since he's robbed the grave of Helen's body. He's in court. They've done a full autopsy. They've uncovered all of this stuff, along with the fact that there was some necrophilia involved because of a tube that was inserted inside her body, so that even though her body was decaying, the act could still go on. So, like I said, 5 years after her body is taken, the court decides to drop the case due to the statute of limitations. He's set free. Her body is taken by the local morgue, and it's put on display so people can come see it as sort of a museum. They can see her rotten body, what he's done to it, the face, how it's been changed, how it's been covered in wax. You know, just to further disrespect her body. A year later, her body is taken out of the morgue, off of display, and laid to rest in an unmarked grave so that Carl could never find her again. Quite a few years passes, and now the late 50s. Carl's body is found. He has died. But the thing with Carl's body is that he's laying on the ground, wrapped in the arms of a life-size doll with the face of Helen. He had taken, before she was laid to rest the first time, he had taken a mold or a cast of her face, as a lot of people did back then, and he kept it as his own, I guess, souvenir, and remade a doll into Helen. So he's now dead. Helen's body is laid somewhere in Key West, Florida. And this is considered one of the strangest cases of necrophilia, maybe to date. 7 years he had her body. During the court trial, he claimed that it was because they were meant to be together, and he was so in love with her, and people actually started to take pity on him. One, because the entire autopsy was not revealed at the time of the trial. You know, there were women in the town who were trying to sympathize with him because he was in love, and it was just, some people go to different lengths. But once all of this came out, I don't think that there was much sympathizing to be done. This man was, you know, a little bit messed up in the head. But the psychiatrists of the day claimed that he was completely sane. There was nothing wrong with him. So take that as you will. But that's all I can eat. I am very full. I ate almost half a pizza. Kind of. Macaroni and cheese pizza. It's a lot of carbs. So I'll just save that for later. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Let me know if you want more videos, if you want me to go away. Hopefully I'll put out another video soon, but who knows?